Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Butterfly Effect podcast. I'm Jack, and I'm here with Liam.
How's it going?
And in today's episode, we are talking about Chapter 3 of Walking Dead Season 1, titled Long Road Ahead. Obviously, we see Lee and Kenny, they're obviously out on a little mission. They're back in Macon to look for supplies. And they go to the drugstore. And you have this whole section, don't you, where you have to winch the Jeep, and you sort of get to have a little moment to explore around. Unless you've got anything else to add, did we want to jump straight into the first main choice of this episode with the screaming girl?
Yeah, can do. I mean, the only thing I really have to mention here is because obviously I chose to try and save Larry in the meat locker in the past episode, that Kenny really wasn't a fan of me ×2 here. Obviously when he drops you and he, ditches you in the sort of burnt building, yeah, we just weren't having a good time. So yeah, this just really reinforced that I just really didn't want to be around Kenny at this point. He just kept putting my life in danger. But yeah, then we get to this choice. So what is it that happens again? You've got this lady who comes out screaming, and Kenny's like, "Oh, she can buy us the time," and she looks terrible, doesn't she? She's covered in dirt, possibly blood. We don't know if she's been bitten or not. And you're kind of like, "Oh, should we spare her? Put her out her misery." And Kenny's like, "Now we need to save the bullets," and she's buying us a distraction. I mean, Jack, as the short in the last week showed us, you're a bit of a savage when it comes to the Walking Dead game.
Yeah.
2 cents to see what I reckon you did here.
Well, you know what? I don't remember. If I'm being completely honest, I don't remember. Like I said at the top, I really don't remember this sequence at all. But if I'm honest, I probably would leave her as bait. I know that sounds terrible, but in a way there is a logic to it. It's a very cold logic, but there's no guarantee that she wouldn't get away. If I shot her in the head, she would definitely be dead, and therefore it would then lure all the zombies over. But at least while she was alive screaming her head off, she was distracting the zombies, which gave us an opportunity to get in there uninterrupted to gather supplies. So, like I said, there is a cold logic to it, but what about you, mate?
Oh mate, I can't believe he's done it again. But yeah, I also left her for dead. Nah, it's like you say, it's logical, and I'm pretty sure I saw her get bitten, and I just was like, even if we saved her, I reckon she would have just been bitten, and then the same would have happened in the last episode when you bring in the man, with a missing leg. She's gonna die. And it's a waste of bullet, and then you get less time to get the supplies later on. I think that's the only thing that changes. I'm pretty sure even if you kill her, the zombies just come on you straight away, and you get less of a window to steal all those supplies. And it's probably a good thing that I did what I did. As heartless as it might be, it makes sense. They're low on supplies and food anyway, so yeah. And I got a heap ton of food, so probably worth it.
Yeah, non-playable character. No dilly-dallying, just... Of course, like you say, it does buy extra time to go and get some supplies. But one thing I thought I'd mention as well is what the fuck has gone down in Macon? Because I swear there's been a plane crash. So it looks like there's one particular shot where I thought I could see the back end of a plane in the roof. And I was like, Jesus, it wasn't that long ago, was it, that we was last year? Something seriously gone down. I think there's a pilot zombie that comes towards you. So yeah, I thought I'd mention that, but of course ultimately you get attacked by walkers, don't you? And you've got a couple of QTEs to get out of there for you and Kenny. Kenny and Lee then make their way back to the motel area after having completed their mission to get supplies. And I suppose it breaks out into a little bit of a debate, isn't it, over what your previous decision was with the girl. Kenny and Lily still got that rivalry. It gets a bit heated. She acknowledges for the first time that someone in the group has been stealing their supplies, but she also has a bit of a go at you. I mean, unless if you didn't just shoot the girl outright. She had a go at me for saying, so you left that girl for bait while you went to get supplies. But for me, like, she has a very good point, but I think Kenny's comeback is like equally just, because he's sort of saying, like, if it wasn't for us going out on these missions, and if it wasn't for us baiting that girl, you wouldn't be having supplies and you would die and you'd become one of the walkers. I don't know how you feel about that, because it's obviously quite a heavy moral discussion, mate. But yeah, it was quite an interesting section, this.
I completely agree, and I'm aware I've been Team Lily up until this point, but I don't know, like, it's kind of double standards. The moment you invite someone back and, potentially spare them by hacking their leg off, out of a bear trap, she's like, oh, why did you bring them back? And then the moment that, you leave someone for dead, she's like, why would you do that? It's like, Lily, how can I make you happy?
Yeah, that's so true. I completely forgot about that. Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought of it on the spot. But yeah, this whole scene's really interesting because it just we've got this whole Kenny versus Lily thing that's been brewing since the last episode. And then it spills over to this one, whether, they should stay at the motel or leave in the RV, whether it was right to, spare this girl or not. And yeah, then it blows up into this. And then obviously, like you say, Lily has this, while she's going crazy, she spills that someone's been stealing from the group, her count's not adding up. I just wanted to get your thoughts. Did you think much of it? Did you instantly have a suspect, or were you like me and it was just that you were thinking Lily's just gone a bit crazy here?
Well, I really don't know. I didn't have a suspect, no, but I wouldn't say I had Lily down as like losing the plot. You'd be forgiven for thinking that way, given that her dad, she just witnessed her dad die. It's a cutthroat world. Sorry, Larry. Of course, you're living in an apocalypse. Naturally, things are going to take its toll. But I suppose I'd be more intrigued by the mystery. Like, we've got a traitor in our ranks. There's going to be an opportunity to sort of go around, try to suss them out, which actually you do in later on in this scene. So yeah, I think I'd just be more intrigued by what was going on. Actually, that's sort of what makes up the bulk of the next... God. In terms of like the gameplay I was watching, it must have been like 30-40 minutes. You're sort of just wandering around as Lee, aren't you? And I know you talk to Carly at one point, and she says that she wants you to admit that you're a murderer to people. I don't know if you wanted to touch on that at all, mate. Like, who you chose to tell.
Yeah, of course. I mean, at the time I was like, okay, this is a bit of a weird section, but, the music did its thing where it went all romantic and, it for the first time kind of lined Lee up and Carly like potentially something was going on there. Yeah. And, me being the 16-year-old simp I was, falling for Carly was like, yeah, right on, I'm telling everyone right now. I wasn't planning on it, but you've told me to, so I will. I just told everyone. I just was like, yeah, guys, I'm a murderer. I don't think it affects too much. Like, if you tell Kenny and you're in his bad books like I was, he's like, oh, that's really bad, and it's going to affect if there's numbers for this boat in, Savannah or whatever it is. And then if you tell Katja, she sort of asks you like, oh, please tell me what happened in the meat locker. I think at the time I lied. I covered Kenny's back a little bit. I was like, you know what? It's already in a bad state. I'm not gonna. Yeah. But if you do tell her, it kind of like shows you that Katja's like, yeah, I don't even know my husband anymore, which is really interesting as the episode goes forward. That Katja's almost just like, I hate this world we live in. She's already talking about how she hates that we carry guns around. So this is the first time I found Katja quite interesting when she had this dynamic. It also affects like Lily when you tell her, because she'll sort of mention it later. But yeah, I just was like, yeah, there you go, Carly, absolute simp. Will you love me yet? I've told everyone. I mean, how about you?
Yeah, like I said again, I can't remember who I told, but from what I did see, I'm not sure if it was handled that great. as sort of like a light criticism, because if I was to go around and tell people, it seemed as though everyone was like, "Oh, really? That's a bit of a surprise. Okay, thanks for telling me." There didn't seem to be a strange reaction on my end. But then again, thinking about it, if you're thinking about my playthrough, I've been killing everyone off. So me walking up to people and saying, "Yeah, I'm a murderer," they'd be like, "No shit," like, because you've been going around, killing half the cast. Which I think is funny, because in your playthrough you've been sparing everyone, so it's probably a little bit more surprising. But yeah, I imagine I would have told Kenny, because I feel like at this point he's my bro, as unhinged as he is. I don't think I'd have told Clem. I feel that's a bit strange to go up to a child and say, "Yeah, I'm a murderer, but you've still got to stick with me." That's like I say, in terms of like how the devs handled that, I'm not too sure I agree with how it went. But anyway, moving on.
I think a big theme about this whole Telltale The Walking Dead is that when we first were exposed to it, like, the emotions were raw and it was this incredible experience. But as time passed and, games like Until Dawn and, came out, we really saw just how narrow the choices were. I know there were games like Heavy Rain that came out beforehand, but still, I think we were very much oversold by this Telltale model, and we didn't realize how linear it was. But it doesn't take away from the blind playthrough experience of when we first played it, when I was 16 or whatever. But yeah, no, I completely agree with that, mate. I mean, the next section's an interesting one, isn't it? Because obviously you go to Lily about what she was saying, and she's a lot calmer. She's like, "Yeah, someone's been stealing." So you go out on, this is like the kind of comedy moment of the episode, isn't it? Where you become a little detective. And we've had one character who's been hiding the whole game, and that's Duck. And tell you what, mate, this is the one time in the game where I actually liked Duck. I don't know if you thought the same.
Why? What was it about Duck that made you hate on him a bit or dislike him?
I mean, don't get me wrong, I get he's just a child, but, like, the guy basically killed Sean by, like, being a bit of a dipshit, by, like, pulling the handbrake or whatever.
Please help me, please.
I don't know, the way he annoys Clem, he's just kind of, Clem's like the complete opposite, where she's like, "Yeah, there's an apocalypse going on, I'm gonna be sensible, quiet, keep my wits about me." But Duck's just the opposite. He's just like a loose cannon who gets, like, the group in danger, and I don't know, like, just not the biggest fan of him. I wasn't at this point. But then, like, it's really cruel, isn't it? Because they throw this scene at you where Duck suddenly becomes a really lovable character, where I guess he's bored and he wants to help you. He kind of compares you to Batman and Robin. And, he's there, like, thinking, a clue. And, he offers to high-five you. And it's just, this part of the game changes completely. But it was a really welcome, change of scene where you get to do a bit of digging. And, we're a fan of crimes, mate, and stuff. It's, not doing them, solving them, I must, add. But, yeah, just a nice little bit of the game here. I don't know if you thought the same.
You know what? As you were speaking, it just got me thinking. And they probably purposely did this whole little relationship with Duck. And I suppose you could level it as a slight criticism, because we ultimately know where Duck's story ends up. But you think of it as well, even in the last chapter with Mark, they introduce him, then kill him off in the same episode. And it's like, it's almost as if maybe like the writers, they got themselves into a situation where it's like, "Oh, you know what, we need to make this character a little bit more relevant because we know what's going to happen to him later on. And we need it to be a sucker punch, an emotional moment. We're going to write in loads of scenes and make him really likeable now." Which I feel like is perhaps what has happened with Duck here. And maybe that's why, you found him so likeable, because you suddenly had more time with him, and like you say, he was like a little ally. But obviously we know where it goes, so it sort of has that I don't know, meh feeling about it, I guess. Maybe that's the wrong word.
Nah, I do completely agree. It's one of those where, on one hand, though, you know, it is more impactful that I actually like felt a little bit for something this episode rather than the other way around. But I do agree it could have been written slightly better. Um, Funny enough, though, like at the end of this whole sequence, you kind of realize that Lily wasn't being crazy. You find like a little bag outside, like an event, don't you? And at this point, I really didn't know what to think. I was thinking like, oh wow, she's being truthful. We actually have a traitor in our midst.
Yeah.
And I don't think I was pointing fingers instantly. I was thinking that. I think one of the thoughts that did cross my brain was either Lily's doing this to like frame us, but at the same time that didn't really make sense considering she wants to like leave or you know stay at the motel. I was thinking maybe this is Kenny's because you know like I was thinking he is kind of not snaky, but I wouldn't put it past Kenny like framing something to say, oh, this place is unsafe, we all need to get in the RV. So I was thinking that, but I was also thinking like, are they trying to make me fall for Carly and she's actually quite evil? And I was thinking, oh, maybe it's Carly. Yeah, I don't know if you had any thoughts at this point, mate.
No, not really. But like for some of the things, yeah, it would have been interesting, you know, because Kenny's obviously kind of your bro. Again, Carly with the love interest. You know, it couldn't really be the kids, could it? Because they're not gonna hold conversations with bandits about supplies and stuff. And by the kids, I mean Clem and Duck. Then yeah, you're sort of just left with Katja and Lily, and I was maybe Katja would be like the least likely, but yeah, like it's finger seems to point one way, but it seems too obvious to be that person. So I can understand why you was perhaps looking at the likes of Kenny and and stuff like that. Yeah. No, as far as me, like I say, memory's absolutely terrible on this chapter, so I don't know what I was thinking at the time.
Yeah, and then obviously, you know, you get the bandits that break in, don't you? Because obviously, you know, they missed their kind of little package or whatever, and they're upset. So they round you up, and you know, there's the whole shooting sequence, and I think we've had a few of these before, but obviously Telltale, they're not too heavy on the gameplay, are they? But it is a pretty cool section, if I'm being honest, of shooting the zombies and kind of looking left out of the cover, right out the cover.
Yeah.
Like I say, I know it's not their origin purpose, but it's not the most enjoyable scene.
Yeah, no, but I thought you would like the fact that Lily and Carly, they were using their guns again.
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't bad, obviously, but yeah. I mean, and then obviously, you know, you get into the RV, don't you? And instantly, while we go into sort of the midsection of this chapter, it just starts kicking off instantly, and it's just really unpleasant. You've got Lily waving the finger like, oh, you did it. And, you know, she's not leaving, particularly for us, it's Carly and Ben. If you have Doug in your playthrough, it's just Ben. And I don't know, were you at this point, were you joining in with Lily? Like, yeah, who was it? There's a traitor in the midst. Or were you like, Lily, chill the fuck out?
I mean, I think I was sort of saying chill out, but I was that was purely just to calm her down and sort of, you know, to de-escalate the situation. But I was completely with her in the sense that I felt that there was someone in the midst that had been a traitor to the group.
I mean, I guess, like, the chapter resumes, right, with Kenny hitting a zombie, and you have to step out the RV, and, yeah, probably the most unpleasant scene of the game, or maybe second most. I didn't see it coming. Like, you know, Lily's just there, like, yeah, it's one of you, and, you know, it's getting more and more heated, and then it happens, doesn't it, Jack? The dreaded moment that it completely took me by surprise. Carly just gets shot in the face, and I think this surprised me because I had all these predictions about how she'd make it to chapter 5, that maybe, like, what I said early doors is that, like, Lee would die and would give Clem to Carly, and then that would be your season 2.
Right.
That was my early prediction, and then no, they just shatter that by the fact that in, you know, episode 3, Carly, the love of my life, just gets shot in the face. And I remember as a kid, I pressed the pause menu, I quit the game. I went back on the game, my choice is saved instantly, so I turned the console off. I restarted the chapter, did my choices differently. In a nutshell, this has to happen, and this took me about like 2 hours to get through this bit because I refused. 16-year-old Liam refused the game where Carly dies.
Oh my God.
And yeah, I was fuming. I really wasn't happy, and I was just like, I was so upset. Yeah, I mean, what were your emotions here, mate?
Yeah.
Probably not as melodramatic as mine, but
Yeah, I wasn't like that even when Abby died in the quarry. And I had a Death Rewind sat there. Yeah, no, very cleverly done, because I think that there's a certain shot, it's very quick, where you can see Lily put her hand behind her back as if to say, she's going to pull out the gun. But you don't see her raise the gun, do you? You're literally just looking at Ben and Carly, and I think Carly turns her head to speak to someone. Then you just see the blood splatter and her go over. So it's not a jump scare by any means, but I thought it was cleverly done, like you say, because it is a big surprise. You didn't realise it would get to that point. Although you could say that because Carly was winding Lily up a little bit, he was matching her in terms of just like her anger and shouting at her, which obviously pushed her over the edge. In terms of Carly dying, yeah, it does suck, because I feel like, as you say, there's the whole love interest angle, which again comes back to the point I made before. It's a bit convenient how suddenly there's a little bit of a love interest angle moments before she dies, just like I said, with Duck earlier on. Yeah, it sucks because I think she's a good character. Obviously she was the one of the few people that knew about you being a murderer, like at the very start, and I feel like some of the other characters, or sort of like Katja, and they just fell a little bit down my ranking more. I didn't care for them as much as I did her, so definitely a shock, but also it does push the story on, so mixed bag really.
I think as well, like if you look at apocalypse groups, you get a variety. We've got kids here, we've got like there was a crazy old racist guy an episode ago. Then it's not exactly a group you see getting jetting off to like Florida together. Like this is a group that's brought together through circumstance. And I think like the only person I could see Lee getting a beer with, like other than maybe Mark in the last episode, is Carly. Like she is probably like the only one like Lee could relate to and actually get on with, and they just eliminated her. And what I love that this show did is that it would probably, like a lot of horror games and slasher things, get rid of like the quietest, most irrelevant people. Like you'd probably expect Katja to be the first to go.
Yeah.
Then maybe Mark. Yeah. But like now it was like, now we're getting rid of like the protagonist, Larry, and then we're getting rid of the love interest. And you've got people like Katja still in the game. And I quite like that. It really showed that like they're getting eliminated in a really unpredictable fashion. And it made you realize at this point for me that no one in this cast was safe. If they're just going to get rid of Carly like that in episode 3, like, the same could happen. And I think, the main thing about this is you're supposed to protect Clementine, and it makes you fear for Clementine that much more, doesn't it? That the writing could probably just get rid of her. Like, that was always a possibility.
Yeah, and I feel like there is a slow escalation, like the deaths are sort of slowly becoming more maybe sort of get like an emotional reaction from Lee. You think of obviously like episode 1 started pretty heavy with like his family, and you have like his brother, the brother as a zombie and stuff. First off, early doors, it starts off with like insignificant ones, in my play at least. Say like Doug, for example, Travis, all the sort of nobody characters. Obviously, there's been Larry, there's been Mark, now there's been Carly. It's like it's slowly like catching up to Lee. It's sort of like, God, like I need to keep these people safe because it could be Kenny next, it could be, as you say, Clem next.
Yeah, of course. I mean, and then you get the choice instantly after whether you leave Lily just in the street, or whether you or in the road even, or if you bring her with you. What did you do?
I left her on the street. I do remember this one. I thought there's no way we can bring her along now. Like she's, everyone's gonna hate on her. They'll look for any excuse to, bump her off or to get her in trouble or anything like that. It wouldn't have felt right taking her along. So I was like, no, you've gone too far now. I was sympathetic with you to a degree, but no, that's it.
Yeah, and I actually kept her. I don't know why. I just was like, yeah, we're a team at the end of the day. I mean, I know she's just killed one of us, and I was fuming with the whole Carly thing. I probably wouldn't do it now. So I can't describe what 16-year-old me was thinking, if I'm being honest. But nonetheless, she joined with us as a prisoner at this point, and you're moving on, and you get a really bizarre section that follows, don't you, with Clementine, where she's kind of having a heart-to-heart with you, and it's like really emotional, and out of nowhere she turns into a zombie.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you're the same as me, but I just was like, nah, this is a dream. This isn't happening.
Yeah. No, yeah, definitely. It sort of, yeah, for a split second it took me by surprise. And I was thinking, no, this can't be right. But I do think they did it quite well.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It was a fun section, just a little bit of a tease there. I mean, then you pull up, right, and then it's probably like the most iconic bit of the level, maybe. We get to the iconic train of season 1. So there's quite a mammoth section, isn't it? Like, there's a lot to do here, mate.
Yes, there is. And I feel like this is the point of the entire season where... I wouldn't say this is an intentional pun, but maybe it is. The train brakes are, they're really sort of pushed down on. Like, it in terms of just the pace, it comes to a shuddering halt. You're going back and forth a lot. I won't go into like all the major details, but you got to go to the front to sort of work out how to start the engine. You got to go back through the carriages and. I don't know. I found it a little bit tedious, to be honest. There's moments where you got to get off the train and then get back on it, and you meet another person to talk to, like the homeless guy, Chuck. So I suppose I see it in a slightly more negative light than a positive light. But what about you, mate?
I completely agree, actually. Like, especially on a replayability front. Like, even me, who's not played the game for like 7 or so years, I wouldn't look forward to going back to the section. Like you say, there are a lot of different things, and it is nice when you first play, I think. Like, even that, like, car at the front where there's, like, crackers or whatever it is for, like, Clem, and you can get that. You get to meet Chuck the first time, and I really like Chuck as a character. Really wise old guy. Brings a guitar in the group, just brings a bit of music, a bit of an uplift after, like, the shitty day you're having. There's a bit of dialogue. Oh, another thing we forgot to mention as well, by the way, Duck got bit. That was like kind of discussed on the RV.
Oh, yeah.
And you go through the whole motions of seeing Duck injured, and he's clearly getting more and more pale, and you've got this grieving mum ready for it to happen, and you've got Kenny doing his whole evasion thing. I had a really interesting scene where I had to go back on the RV to get a pencil to like figure out the engine, where you scratch the top page.
Yeah.
And upon doing that, Lily breaks out her cuffs who's stuck on the RV, and she's sort of like, it's like, me and you, we can go right now. And instead, like, I said, no, I've got a Clem here, and she kicked me out. So I always use this choice in The Walking Dead to sort of say how linear the game is. You make a choice, chances are the other one will just come full circle a moment later, and this is exactly that. Leaving Lily on the road or taking her with you won't change the outcome of the game. It's just whether she brings with you, whether she's in the background for 10 more minutes. So I always thought that was really disappointing.
Tell you what, before we go on to the train bit, mate, it's just really interesting because obviously I've never seen that before. I've never seen her get out of the cuffs, so I've actually never seen her travel with the group in the RV in the first place. But it does just hit a bit of a bum note. I do agree with you in the sense that it just goes to show how linear the game is and how your choices really don't matter. It's just an illusion of choice. And speaking of like coming games in the future, whether it's like Wolf Among Us 2 or The Expanse or whatever, I'm not saying they need to sort of bring it up to Quantic Dream, supermassive levels even. I hope there is more sophistication with Telltale's choices, though. I'll sort of just put that as a little note. It makes the experience a little bit more personalised and a little bit more, I don't know, enjoyable, I guess. Replayable.
Yeah, like obviously the games, the studios we've covered, Supermassive Games. We'll probably look at doing Quantic Dreams in the future, maybe. There's a few, and it goes without saying that those studios have a lot more sophisticated choices than Telltale. If you were to rank, them, Telltale would probably fall somewhere near the bottom. And it doesn't mean that, I dislike Telltale. It's just, I would say it's certainly the most deceiving game in terms of, branches and choices.
Yeah, exactly. But of course, they do eventually get the train on the move. And there's a couple of sequences here where, as you say, you're talking to Kenny, and he's obviously in denial about Duck. He's telling you to go back and tell Catcher that everything's okay. You have sequences where you talk to Chuck at the front, and he's almost like this drunk yet wise figure that seems to give you various bits of advice, doesn't he? Where it's talking about Clem, telling him that you can't protect her, you can't wrap her in cotton wool your whole life. You need to start to teach her various things about this apocalyptic world, i.e. firing a gun, whether it's also cutting her hair as well, just sort of street smarts, that sort of thing. Which was actually quite a nice thing, actually, that they did that. And also as well, a huge revelation, mate. There's one point where you're going back and forth on the train and you can speak to Ben, and Ben admits his guilt. He admits that he was the one that was supplying the bandits with all the meds and things beforehand. So, what were your thoughts on this bit?
I was stunned, if I remember rightly, because I think I didn't really suspect him, and he kind of went under the radar. And I think, embarrassingly enough, it might just be because I kind of underestimated, or maybe I forgot about him. He kind of joined a little, at the start of the last episode, so I kind of almost didn't consider him a part of the group. I don't know. So he kind of just slipped through the radar for me. But yeah, it completely caught me off guard. How about you?
Yeah, he's one of them background characters, isn't he? Like, he just, you know he's there, but like you're not quite sure who he is or what he really offers to the group. Even when he's on the watch post, I don't know, there's just something about Ben, like whether it's just his personality, he just doesn't seem to feel part of this group. So I suppose naturally that makes him the perfect candidate for this. It would be sort of against expectations if it was to be one of the others, but I'm pretty sure in my playthrough Lee was like, you need to keep that to yourself. He's pissed at him, don't get me wrong. He's like, it's not going to help anyone at this point if you start, blabbering around, oh yeah, I was the one that did it, considering Harley's just been killed. Lily's been abandoned and such. Another criticism I'm going to level at this one is it feels very stop and start. So no longer are you starting the train journey and getting somewhere. Suddenly you have to stop the train because it looks like the duck's going to turn. And while this scene is good, I'm just going to quickly go on a tangent and compare it to like episode 2. Episode 2, it felt like you was constantly moving forward in the plot. Whether it was sort of like the whole thing with the David and the schoolboys at the start, and you meet the St. John's, you then go to the farm, you're then at the farm, and while you're at the farm you get like all these little breadcrumbs and hints about what's really going on. You've got the whole sequence with the bandit. With this one, it feels very stop-start, and particularly because of the train sequence that you're just going backwards and forwards a lot. So like, I'll say it now, whether you agree, Matt, I don't know, but I feel like that episode 2 is the peak of this particular season. And by no means does it drop off a massive cliff or whatever, but I feel like that we are on like the downward curve now.
Yeah, I haven't really taken any time to rank the episodes, and that might be a really cool thing we do. But I would say that, episode 2, certainly I rate it high, maybe the best one. Episode 3, probably, yeah, you're right, quite a poor episode. I think it's like 2 hours or more. the pacing's all over the shop, and I think it's probably masked kind of how bad it is by the fact that there's a lot going on in terms of like your group, by like how it changes and the emotions. If you get rid of those kind of scenes, yeah, it probably is a bit of a lackluster, tedious drag, isn't it?
Yeah, because a lot of it you are just talking to people, like not actually doing that much. And even when you do something, it doesn't last 5 minutes because you then stop and have to talk to some people again. But yeah, I thought I'd put that in there. But of course, we do come to this scene, which I think is good. It's a touching moment where it's quite obvious that Buck's going to turn, and Katja and Kenny have this moment together where, you know, Kenny's no longer in denial, and they wonder how that sort of they're going to resolve this situation, because no parent wants to shoot their kid, of course they don't. But equally they don't want to leave their kid to be a walker, you know. And obviously you get a choice that comes up, and maybe it's I don't know, I think it was just me trying to be like a genuinely nice person, even though this is going to sound really twisted. But you could also level it as Lee, especially in my playthrough, being a bit of a serial killer. He just wants to kill everything in sight. As soon as the option come up, what should we do with Duck? Lee was putting his hand up saying, I'll do it. Because the next thing I know, I was talking to Clem, and you hear a gunshot and Katja's committed suicide. And then I ultimately have to go into the woods and pick up the gun and shoot Duck, which was a bit weird. But yeah, how did that play out for you, mate?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, even before we get to this scene, I've got like, I don't know if you had this, but because my relationship with Kenny was so rocky, he wouldn't stop the train. And I think if your relationship's good with him, you can make him stop it through dialogue.
Right.
I never had that, and I don't know if it's because my relationship with him was so rocky. In fact, I've never been able to get him to stop the train. What happened with me is you've got to physically beat him up in order for him to stop the train. You actually have to beat sense into him. Did you ever have that?
Don't remember it. Oh.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, it's funny because like I never knew you could stop him through dialogue. I've only ever known to beat up Kenny here. Because you're just on such a rocky path that he's just, no, we're not stopping, we need to get to the water. And this man who's in denial, he refuses to say that his son's going to die, because he's just constantly like, no, my son's fine, he's like my family, it's like nothing's gonna happen to him. And I'm like, mate, like, look at this napkin full of blood. He's like, no, you're lying, or whatever, or I can't remember. But then you're just like, look, I'm gonna have to for Catcher's sake, I'm gonna have to stop you. And then you have a fight, and then you beat some sense into him before he stops it, and then it triggers the emotional scene. So yeah, that was a really interesting one, and it's pretty cool from Telltale how that small thing can vary. But yeah, it's just interesting talking to Clem, and out of nowhere you hear this gunshot, and it's like I instantly knew what happened. I'm like, oh yeah, Katja, from the moment her not liking the fact we're carrying guns, her not being a fan of this apocalyptic world, losing faith in, her husband, maybe falling out of love about who he's becoming. And, Kenny being in denial, thinking he's going to have a whole family, to facing the fact that he's going to have to lose one, to then learning that he's going to have no family,
Yeah.
all within a space of about 10 minutes. I mean, I've not been a fan of Kenny, but I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. That is excruciating what he's just gone through. So I felt so bad for the man. And then, of course, yeah, you've got the choice about whether you want to help him and, shoot. And I'm like, yeah, no man can shoot his own son. He shouldn't have to do that. I mean, a bit of a grim story, but, in real life here, I've got, friends who lost a cat and they had to bury it and they just couldn't face doing it. So I did it for them. I just feel like it's the right thing to do, to step in to prevent family from having to do those harsh moments themselves, So, I was like, yeah, I'll shoot your son. And it's just dark, it's certainly the darkest episode we've had yet. I mean, there's different kinds of dark. We've had the cannibalism one, we've had the world turning for the first time. But this is the one where your group that started off as 8, 9 people or whatever, and out of nowhere you're on its bare bones. It's like you, Clem, Kenny, Ben, I believe, and Chuck, this new homeless guy you've just met. Yeah, and I just was like, oh my god, what is happening to our group? It's just like out of nowhere. Yeah, the numbers have just dramatically decreased. But I quite like that though. I was not expecting to walk into episode 3, the middle, episode of the season. I thought we'd be getting a filler here, but now we're actually getting quite a lot of, ballpark change, to be honest.
Yeah, especially considering, episode 2, there's a lot of death, isn't there? And I wouldn't necessarily say like a massive recycling of the group, but like there's potential for so many characters to get killed off. So yeah, obviously it's a very touching scene, and it's very brave of Telltale to even sort of go into these themes, because you talk about killing a child. What is it with choice-based games? Because killing children, it's the Quarry, with Caleb and Silas and stuff. So, kids being killed.
So I think it's actually a nod to the comics. I've read the first 100, I think, and there's a lot of child death in the Walking Dead comics. Like, there's fans of the TV show, but they cut down massively on the TV show. The comic books are like grim.
Oh, God. Oh, right, okay, that's interesting to know. But yeah, I mean, of course, ultimately, we move on. It's quite a sombre moment for Kenny, and to touch on what you said before, it's his whole purpose has been to get his family to the coast, to get a boat, to then leave. Now that they're both gone, like what that must be doing to his head, because it's like, in a weird way, he's going to want to escape because of the apocalypse, of course, but he's going to be going on his own, and he's probably looking at it as that he's going to be leaving them behind away. So there's all this stuff going on. I think that's why people warm to Kenny. I think partly through sympathy. He is a flawed character, but I think it's that he's quite honest about trying to be a good family man, but people can see that he is flawed. But I think that's what people like about him. He's slightly imperfect, and I think they may see themselves a little bit in Kenny. I don't know. Also, I'm going to give a nod to Kenny. In my opinion, he has like the best dialogue or the best line of this chapter.
Fuck, 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 fuck! Maybe we could walk? That's fucking stupid, Ben.
It's not wordplay, it's nothing smart, it's not a pun. I don't know, the delivery of it, the fact that it was aimed at Ben after, his admitting of guilt, absolutely loved it. I was like, yes, Kenny, like you're back, you're back, even though you've got all this sort of heartache and stuff, you're still the character that I know and love.
Ironically as well, I've always said that the problem with Kenny is that, as any family man would, he'd put, his family before you, and it, the fact that he's not level-headed, it puts you in jeopardy, like, I thought it was massively doing in the last episode. Funny enough, him losing his family probably makes him more trustworthy, in my opinion. Like, yeah, he's going to be a bit more emotionally vulnerable, but I was like, okay, like, this is just a man who's here to survive, and, we're probably, like, his new family in a way. But yeah, like you mentioned, we get to the tanker, and I guess the first thing to mention is that our group instantly adds 2 more members to the pack. We're introduced to Krista and Omid, and it's interesting because you're having the worst day ever, and this group meet you, and I think even Omid says it. He's like, "Oh wow, you guys aren't big on introductions."
Yeah.
So like instantly off the bat, I'm kind of like not a fan of Krista. She's just instantly prying. She's like, we're going back to that whole dynamic of, oh, you're not a real dad. And I'm like, yeah, we've been through this, Krista. And she's just really like kind of judgy and paranoid. Whatever you do, she's just on your tail. Like, oh, what are you guys doing? Like, Omid, on the other hand, really fun character, very different. We haven't really kind of had like a comic relief character as of yet, other than, a few kind of cute Clementine moments and, like you mentioned, a few kind of funny dialogue things with Kenny back there. But yeah, I mean, what did you make of the new duo?
I suppose it felt very soon. I think for me, like, I find I like Omid. If I was being honest, I would say that they were kind of plain. When I think of Walking Dead season 1, I'm not thinking Omid and Krista. I'd need a few minutes before I got to them. I'm thinking Kenny, Lily, Larry, etc. So maybe they're victims of like being in the patches of the game that are just less good. I don't know. It's a bit of a theory.
I mean, the only thing to comment on this scene, really, mate, is just the fact that you do more sort of like back at the train, a lot more wandering around to try and find out how you can get rid of this tanker.
Yeah.
You can go up and kind of, cut it down. You have to go over to the little cabin where, a little down the way. A bit of a tedious section again, just more sort of teaching with Clem. There's not much really to add other than how Clem, is just there with the gun, but she just doesn't have the courage to shoot it just yet, so she's not fully ready. Quite powerful. I quite like this, But yeah, to be honest, mate, it kind of goes to the close, doesn't it? Where you're ready to cut the tanker down. I quite like the comic relief in, instantly dobbing into Omid to kind of do all the dirty work, leaning him off the bridge. I think, when you cut off the tanker, it's you and Omid at the top. You can light up the ground, I think. I don't think I ever did it on my first playthrough. I think I missed that option. So I never had any cool kind of flame thing of the horde going through it. Because that's another thing I've neglected as well. You've got this horde that are coming, don't you?
Yeah.
And you're racing against the clock essentially to get this sorted. I mean, I don't think anything really happens anyway because they're so far away. But yeah, the last thing that happens is everyone starts moving on the train again, and you're with Omid, and you have to make the jump, don't you? I can't remember. Did you push Omid, or did you jump before him and make him follow?
No, I did jump. I've just met the guy. I can't. Even my version of Lee has some sort of, etiquette. You can't push him off the bridge just yet. We just met him, but yeah, I jumped. He followed, and he then fell down. And he obviously has to run alongside. Again, I can't really remember what I picked, but as a way to in the episode, it was cool. But this whole section in general, my main criticism for this chapter is it's been so stop-start. It doesn't feel like there's a very clear direction of travel, which is ironic because you're in an RV and a train for the bulk of it. I think that it would have been better to end the episode with the whole Hatcher committing suicide and you shooting duck. Maybe you go back to the train and go off into the distance and start episode 4 with this. Because it would have been a pretty badass entrance, you got to cut the tanker down, the blowtorch, then you got to jump off the bridge and everything's up in flames. I think it would have been a great way to start episode 4, to be honest. Whereas I think it having tacked on at the end, as you say, it just felt a bit tedious. You're looking round again, the train stopped again, all these things that I've been saying previous.
Yeah, of course. I mean, no, it is a very good point, and it'll be interesting to see your take on that in the comments, guys. I mean, for my section, I quite like the dialogue with Omid. I think you're jump, and he's no, and you're come on, jump. He's still no. So that tickled me quite a lot. There are a few good Omid moments, other than comic relief. Like you say, he doesn't add that much else, but it's nice just to get a few gags like that, especially in a depleted group, where emotions are very low. But yeah, he falls off, and out of Omid and Krista, because Krista goes down to save him, I grabbed Omid because it's you know what, I'm grabbing the guy who's got the broken leg potentially. Yeah. Krista's quite physically fit, and Omid starts having a go at you she's a woman, don't you know? But Krista gets on anyway, so I'm oh my god, Omid, you got a bit of a dark side. Don't know if I like that tone on you, mate.
But nice little cliffhanger, isn't it? Yeah, they have Clem's walkie-talkie and they start hearing a voice on the other side that's addressing her and knows Lee by name and saying, oh yeah, when you arrive at it is Savannah they're going to, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you arrive to Savannah, don't tell Lee and all this sort of thing. Sort of sets up a character for later on. I quite liked it. What about you?
Quite liked it, definitely dramatic. I'm not gonna lie though, I was very confused. I was thinking, how's this man got the other walkie-talkie? Because I'm pretty sure Glenn drove off with the other one in episode 1. So I was sat there how on earth has this stranger got, is it Glenn? How on earth has someone got this from Glenn? How do they know who we are? So yeah, I just was baffled, to be honest. And I think when you do play the other episodes, you will realise that the voice actor changes. So the man that you know hear at the end of this episode is nothing like the voice we'll get to learn later. You know, is the stranger afterwards. So in terms of like a full circle thing of looking at the bigger picture, I did think it was a bit disappointing. Like the stranger later on gets a much better voice, a much more somber and kind of like haunting voice. Like this man on the end of the walkie-talkie sounds like, you know, Al from Al's Toy Barn in Toy Story. Just like, you know, this really excited guy, like, oh yeah, I've got your parents coming, Tanya, you should come over. And I'm just like, what is going on? But yeah, like in terms of when I first reacted to it, I was more confused than I was thrilled. But yeah, like a decent way to kick it off. You know, you've got this whole, you're trying to look out for Clementine, and then there's this mystery man on the other end, and it certainly, you know, posed questions and kept my brain jogging and thinking for the next 2 months before the next episode came out, mate.
Okay, sweet. I mean, we'll wrap it up there. Of course, guys, I mean, speaking for me personally, I've been low-key been shitting on this chapter quite a bit. So do let me know if you disagree or agree with any of my opinions, or of course Liam's opinions as well. And who knows, maybe it will get a little bit better for me when we go into episode 4. But thank you very much for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we'll see you next time.
But yeah, from myself, guys, thank you very much for joining. Yeah, it's been a pleasure as always recapping, you know, and revisiting these Telltale episodes. Like Jack said, let us know in the comments what you thought. Tell us if you're enjoying the series, and we'll see you next week. But I can't even remember the name of the episode. It's the one set in the school. Yeah, there we go. That shows you how much care and research I put into these
so
things.
Polished. See you guys.
Oh, bye guys. Take care. Is this episode the St. John's because Jack's beating the shit out of him?
Yeah.